All right, good afternoon, students. Today we are going to do an example out of Section 8 in the Canadian Electrical Code on a calculation for a service for a single-family dwelling. The rule is 8-200, subrule 1, is this calculation we're going to perform with the various loads that we have written on the board here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run through the rule with you. Hopefully you have your code books in front of you. We'll run through the rules and then we'll perform the calculation on the whiteboard behind me. All right? So the rule, calculated load for services and feeders. So single family dwellings, pretty much everybody will become familiar with this calculation throughout their 4 years of technical training. Anytime you see a rule that has a quote to an Appendix B, you should make it a habit of going to that Appendix B and reading the note to the rule. So I'm going to run through the rule and then we'll take a look at what it says there. All right, here we go. 8-200 single family dwelling, subrule 1. The calculated load for a service or a feeder supplying a single dwelling shall be based on the greater of item A or B. Item A is the calculation you perform, and B, after you perform the calculation, you come down and look at B, and what they say is, if the area of the single family dwelling, exclusive of the basement floor, is 80 meters or more, the minimum demand is 24,000 watts. So you perform your calculation in A, and then once you're done, you compare it to the value in B. All right? So if we start here and we look, 8-200 1AI, a basic load of 5,000 watts for the first 90 meters squared of living area, plus an additional 1,000 watts for each 90 meters squared, or portion thereof, in excess of 90 meters squared. The quote here that you see in italics, see Rule 8-110, is the determination of areas. So in this example, we have 473 meters squared of area. If they just gave you a building if they just gave you a building and they broke it down into basement, main floor, top floor, and they gave you different areas and dimensions, you would have to go to this rule, 8-110, and figure out the areas based on that. But generally, in your training, what you're going to get is the square meters given to you. So that's why there is the quote to the rule there. Right here. See Rule 8-110? That is the determination of areas. All right? So the first part is we break this area down and we apply some watts to it. Then we have the other various loads that are in the dwelling. For example, generally you're going to have an electric range, an electric clothes dryer, could have a carburetor, could not. Some type of form of heating for a hot water, whether it's a tankless water heater or a hot domestic storage tank. And Then some type of heating for the area, whether it's baseboard heating, could be a gas furnace, which isn't electric, obviously. And then, in this case, we have an electric furnace. All right? So as we run through the rules, I have the pertinent rules that deal with each load right beside it. So we'll run through the rules anyways, and then as I got the calculations, and you're watching the video, and hopefully you have the code book in front of you, you can run through this. Every calculation that you do for a single-family dwelling is textbook like this type of scenario. They're not that hard. It's more repetition work than anything. So we have a basic load of 5,000 watts for the first 90 meters squared living area, additional 1,000 watts for each 90 meters squared or portion thereof. So that means if it's 1 meter, 0.1 meter over 90 meters, you must put in an additional 90 meters. You'll see that when I actually do it on the whiteboard. Any electric space heating loads provided for with demand factors as permitted in section 62, plus any air conditioning loads with a demand factor of 100% subject to Rule 8-106 sub-Rule 4. Our heating rules reside in section 62. That is why there's a quote to the rule in section 62. The Rule 8-106 sub-Rule 4 is a demand factor rule, and what it does allows us to do, if we had an electric furnace and an air conditioning, generally, your summertime, you have your air conditioning on and your heat off. And in the winter, you have your heat on and your air conditioning off. What the Rule 8-106.4 does is allow you to look at these loads as long as they are electrically interlocked in some way where only one can come on, then the one with the largest value is used in the determination of the service, and the other one is left out. And in this example, we have no air conditioning, so we do not have to look at 8-106 sub-Rule 4. Any electric range provided for as follows: 6,000 watts for a single range, plus 40% of any amount by which the rating of the range exceeds 12 kilowatts. Any electric tankless water heater. This is your on-demand water heaters that are generally mounted right under the sinks, etc. Okay? It specifically has to say tankless water heater for some sort when you get a question. Or electric water heaters for steamers, swimming pools, hot tubs, or spas with a demand factor of 100%. These types of loads are on continuously and they give you no break in the service calculation. They must go in at 100% of their rating. If we had an electric vehicle charger, we would look down here at 8201 AVI, which says, except as permitted by 8-106-11, any electrical vehicle equipment loads with a demand factor of 100%. Rule 8-106-11 is an electric vehicle management system. You're not going to see that type of scenario in a single-family dwelling, but you were definitely going to see electric vehicle supply equipment loads in the future, if you don't already have, in single-family dwellings. So if you have one electric vehicle charger, it must go in with 100% rating. Then, any loads provided for that have a rating in excess of 1,500 watts, in addition to those outlined in items I to VI, at A, 25% of the rating of each load, if an electric range has been provided for, or 100% of the combined loads up to 6,000 watts, plus 25% of the combined load that exceeds 6,000 watts, if an electric range has not been provided for. So that little part confuses first-year students quite a bit, and some of the returning students in second year. What it really means is, what they look at is the range. If you do not have a range, what they want is these other loads such as the electric clothes dryer, the domestic hot water tank. They want you to take those loads, add them together, and put 6,000 watts in regardless, and then the rest goes in at 25%. Because you'd be undersizing your service. So when I do these calculations, I always start with my square area, then I look at the range. Do you have a range or don't you? Because that changes the calculation, because you have to come back to the rule down here at VII and take those other loads and add them up. They're either going in at 25% or they're going in at 100% for the first 6,000 plus 25% of the rest. All right? So that's the run through of the rules. Now I will perform the calculation on the board. You've got the rules here. All right? Here we go. First thing I do, I take the 473 and I divide it by 90. And now, that is my portion. So the first 90 square meters goes in at 5,000 watts. So you got to get in the habit of being, I can't stress this enough, students, be neat, methodical, don't scribble. You must get neat in your training when you're doing this. So we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10,000 watts of demand strictly for the area. This square meter squared, and what that allows is for lights and plug load. All right? Because really it's unknown. Get that out of the way. Tackle the range. It says there, you must put in, even though the rating of the range is 16 kilowatts, it goes into the service at 6,000 plus 40% of the amount that exceeds 12 kilowatts. So write it out. I'm just going to move that 10,000 watts over there so I have a nice neat column. All right, we have the range in there, 7,600 watts. Then we can come down here and look at the electric clothes dryer. We'll just do them in the order that they are on the whiteboard. If I look at the electric clothes dryer, there is no specific listing for the clothes dryer like there is for the area, the space heating, the electric tankless water heaters, etc., the electric vehicle chargers. So it comes down under this rule, VII. Any loads provided for that have a rating in excess of 1,500 watts. At 25% of the rating of each load if a range has been provided for. So you'll see here that we have the dryer. It's 6 kilowatts. It goes in at 25%. Even though the nameplate says 6,000, it goes into service at 25% of that. That gives us 1,500 watts. Come down to the next load, and we look at the garburator, and there is no specific rule for the garburator, so it falls under the same rule as the dryer, except it's less than 1,500 watts. So it's not even goes into the service at all. We can simply put a line through it, and that's the end of it. We also have the domestic hot water tank. It also goes in under the electric clothes dryer, the same rule. Don't get confused with the tankless water heater. The domestic hot water tank in a single family dwelling falls under the same rule there. So we have a 4.5 kilowatt hot water tank at 25%. Always double check your math, be neat. We have the hot water tank done, carburetor's out, we have the electric clothes dryer done, we have the electric range. Pool heater, it's specifically quoted in the rule here where it says any tankless water heaters, electric water heaters for steamers, swimming pools, or hot tubs, or spas with the man factor of 100%. What that means is, whatever the nameplate says, that's what it goes into the service at. Pool heater, 7,750 watts at 100%. All right? Then, the heat. I always, even though the heat is one of the first rules, I generally leave it to the last. It doesn't matter really how you perform the calculation as long as you get the rules right. But the critical one is you have to determine the range. Because if you don't have it, it changes how you deal with the other loads at 25%. All right, so here on the electric furnace, it says, quote says about section 62. The rule in section 62 that we're going to have to look at is 62-118 subrule 4. We'll go there. You are going to have to be very familiar with 62-118 throughout your training, your technical training, years 1 through 4. So, section 62